In honor of Shabbos Chazoin, when Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev says every Jew is shown the third Beis HaMikdash, and this increases his desire to see it in real life, and also because it's the 3 weeks, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe encouraged us to learn about the Beis HaMikdash in this time, I'm going to give a short shir on the mitzvah of guarding the Beis HaMikdash. So the pasuk in Parshas Korach says that Hashem said to Aaron, you and your children and your family should bear the sin of the Mikdash and the sin of the Kahuna. Your brother, the tribe of Levi, should help you and serve you. They should guard your guarding and the guarding of the Oyel. So based on this pasuk and other psukim, the commentaries say it is a positive mitzvah from the Torah for the Kohanim and Leviyim to guard the Beis HaMikdash. In fact, the Mishnah, in 2 places, the beginning of tractate Tamid and Midos, talks about the various places where the Kohanim and Leviyim would guard. The Mishnah says in 3 places the Kohanim would guard, and in 21 places the Leviyim would guard. So the question is, what exactly is the purpose of this guarding? The commentaries say that it actually had nothing to do with fear of. On the contrary, ein anius b'mokem ashirus. There is no poverty in a place of wealth. And to guard for fear of stealing, it would show that we care about, the trivialities of having to replace this or that gold or silver item. Rather, other reasons are given. The simple reason, which seems to be borne out by the psukim, is that it has to do with the Beis HaMikdash, and before that the Mishkan, not being contaminated. That means that the Leviyim and the Kohanim had to simply make sure that the people could not go beyond the proper border. A person who was Tameh could not go into certain areas, depending on his level of Tumah. And a person who was not a Kohen could not go beyond certain areas. And that was a job of the Leviyim and the Kohanim to oversee this. This is the reason given by the Vilna Gaon in his commentary on the beginning of tractate Tamid. The Rambam says that even though there is no fear of enemies or robbers, we guard the Beis HaMikdash. The purpose of this is to honor it. A palace with guards is not the same as a palace without guards. The Rosh, in the beginning of tractate Tamid, says something slightly different. The Rosh says that the purpose of this guarding is so that we should not be Mesiach Das. First of all, he actually says it's simply a pasuk, it's a mitzvah. But second of all, he says, Shaloi Yasichu Daitam Mimenu. They should not remove their minds from it, Loi b'yom v'loi b'layla, neither by the day nor by night. And he brings a pasuk, Ushmartem es mishmeres habayis misoch. You should guard the guarding of the house from being distracted from it. So the commentaries discuss why exactly you can't be distracted, why you have to keep your mind on it. Some say, specifically the Sefer Ezra's Kohanim, which is an excellent Sefer and a commentary on the Mishnah of Midos. So he says that it means that they had to make sure it not become tamei. Not just they had to make sure, they had to constantly have it in their mind that it should not become tamei, which is the halacha regarding karbonos. You have to not be Mesiach Das. When a korban is in your possession, you have to think about it to make sure that it not become tamei. The Lubavitcher Rebbe learns a slightly different pshat in this. And he says that it's also about honor. Because it's such a holy item, we want to constantly keep our minds on it. Just like a person who's wearing tefillin, it says you cannot be Mesiach Das, you cannot remove your mind from it. It's not about the tefillin becoming tamei per se. It's a holy item. It's in your possession. You have to show your reverence for it. by thinking about it. The same thing applies to the Mishkan. As an aside, it's an interesting thing that the Rosh brings this pasuk, which is actually found regarding Yehoyada, the Kohen Gadol, who was instructing his fellow Kohanim when they were guarding the young king Yoash, and they were about to overthrow the wicked king Asaliah and install this young man who had been hidden in the Holy of Holies for 7 years. So in the simple reading of the text, it seems like he was instructing the Kohanim to guard this young king from his enemies who were the friends of Asaliah, so that they should not kill him. But evidently the Rosh learns that the verse is referring to the Beis HaMikdash itself. That means that some of the Kohanim were supposed to guard the young king, and some of them were supposed to keep their mind on the Beis HaMikdash, which is what they did every single day. Another interpretation, which is from the Arizal, is that we should guard the Beis HaMikdash, and that this guarding will protect it from evil forces. The Arizal explains that when we would bring the karbanos during the day, that would ward off the evil forces known as the klipos. But at night, there was no karban. So therefore, they would guard. And of course, when they would guard, they would talk Torah. And these words of Torah that were exchanged by the Kohanim and Leviyim, that would protect the place from negative forces. There's an interesting discussion as to when they would guard. Some say that they would guard day and night, as the pasuk in Yeshaya says that Al Chamasach Yerushalayim Hifkadati Shomrim Kol Hayoim Uchol Halayla Tamid Lo Yechashu. On the walls of Yerushalayim I have appointed watchmen, all day and all night. They shall never be silent. Hamaskirim es Hashem al tidami lachem. Those that remember Hashem should never be silent. So based on this verse, there are commentaries that explain, specifically the Mefarish on the Tractate Talmud. He's printed on the side of the page. I don't believe we know who he is. And the Rosh that we just mentioned earlier says that both day and night they would guard. The Rambam, on the other hand, says that they would only guard at night. Now, the question is, if the purpose of guarding the Beis HaMikdash would be from thieves, we would understand. By day, there's so much action that nobody could take anything. But at night, they need to be guarded. But if it's because of honor, then what's the difference, day or night? So the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains that when we say it's the honor of the Beis HaMikdash, it's actually the same as the concept of the Rosh. We keep our minds on it, and that's how we show that we honor it. So during the day, we are obviously keeping our minds on it by showing that we're by doing the sacrifices. And that is the honor. At night, when there are no sacrifices, we have to show that we're keeping our mind on it, and that's why we guard it. Interestingly, the Ravid says that the guarding took place in some of the areas night and day, and in some areas just by day. And he bases this on the following pasuk. When the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim describes the various sections where they would guard, it talks about Tzafoina Layoim and Negba Layoim, which can be translated for in the north they guarded for the day, and in the south they guarded for the day. So he has two ways of interpreting this word. Either Layoim actually means 24 hours, and that means in those sections they guarded for 24 hours, but in the rest of the place, they only guarded at night. The reason for that perhaps is because in the rest of the place, there were people milling around, doing the service of the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore they didn't need to have guards. Whereas in this place, it was somewhat further out from the main entrance, which was on the east side, and therefore there had to be guards by day also. Another interpretation, quite the contrary, is that layoim means daytime only. That means in the north and in the south, they guarded only during the day, whereas in the other places, they guarded day and night. So the way he explains this is that these areas needed more guards because they had to keep track of people coming in, even on the side, that people would not come in when they were tameh. In the main areas, since there were Kohanim and Leviyim there anyway, they would be able to look after that. But on the side, they needed special guards to make sure that nobody would come in when they were tameh. Whereas at night, when people did not come into the Beis HaMikdash, they didn't need to guard for that. It was just for honor, and it was sufficient to have less guards. Now, there's an interesting discussion as to how many people guarded in each group. The Rambam says in the 8th chapter of the laws of the Beis HaMikdash, in the 4th halacha, the Chaf Dalet Eda Shemin Oisai B'Chalayla. There were 24 Eidos, and Eda means a group. But it could sometimes mean 10, as it does regarding the Meraglim, the spies, and as it does regarding Dvarim Shebekdusha, holy matters, prayers, and so on. So the commentaries say that the Rambam actually means that there were 10 groups. There were groups of 10 in each of the 24 places where the Kohanim and Leviyim guarded. Actually, some say that there was a total of 240, 210 Leviyim, 10 in each of the 21 spots, and 30 Kohanim, 10 in each of those spots. Some say that in each of the spots of the Kohanim, there were also Leviyim. So there were actually 270, 240 Leviyim and 10 Kohanim. The reason why you would need 10 is perhaps, this is the suggestion of the Tiferes Yisrael, the commentary on Mishnayos, on Tractate Talmud, is because guarding the Beis HaMikdash is considered a holy job. And in holy matters, we need a minyan, like when we daven. Alternately, based on the Arizal, the whole purpose of the guarding is to fend off the negative forces. This is accomplished by bringing down the Shekhinah, and discussing Torah with a minyan specifically brings down the greatest amount of Shekhinah. As we read in Pirkei Avos, Asar sheyeshvim v'oiskin b'Torah Shekhinah shruya b'neihem. Shekhinah rests when 10 people are involved in studying Torah. However, some disagree with this interpretation of the Rambam, and they say there's no source to say there were 10. Ada means a group, perhaps even more so. Ada perhaps is a misprint, and originally it said Echad, 1, and the ayin was switched for an aleph, and the hey was switched for a ches. And really it should just say that there was 1 in each spot. Be that as it may, there are different opinions of where these Kohanim and Leviyim would face. The Rosh says, in a different interpretation of the word layoim, to the day, is that they would actually face the rising sun. They would face east when they would guard. Now, what does it mean they would face east, or why, I should say? Why would they face east? This is because in those areas, they would be facing the main entrance of the Beis HaMikdash. And they wanted to make sure, right, the east entrance was the main entrance. They wanted to make sure that those entering were not tameh, were not ritually impure. And that's why they would specifically face that direction. However, some question this Rosh, and they wonder where he got it from. because they do not see any source for it earlier. Interestingly, there's an opinion that the Leviyim, even if they would guard for 24 hours, as we said, there were opinions that would even guard during the day, nevertheless, they would take time off during the singing of the Leviyim. Not that those that would guard would also sing. In fact, the Gemara says that these jobs were for separate families, and any person that was in a family was supposed to guard was not allowed to sing. And if he would sing, he would be liable for the death penalty. But rather, they would go to be there and take part in watching the singing. And then they would go back to the guarding afterwards. I wish you all a wonderful Shabbos. May Hashem transform these days to days of happiness and joy. We should experience the 9th of Av with Mashiach and the Beis HaMikdash in the holy city of Yerushalayim.